Hi, thanks for joining. I'm Cody Gibson, the Director of Growth for the Keller Williams Expansion Network. And all that means right now is we're talking about the idea and the pathway of Keller Williams opening a digital brokerage in all 50 states across the country. And there's a couple of things. I'll talk for about 20 or 25 minutes this morning. I'm doing these every single week. Just to talk and talk and talk and answer questions. Like at Keller Williams, this is a big undertaking for us and a giant stake in the sand, if you will, of what things look like in the future for our expansion agents and our expansion network owners. And so there is no question that's like too small or a bad question or a dumb question. None of that. Like if you've got one, throw it in the chat box. Lacey here in my office will get it to me and we'll answer it right here. And if I can't answer it here, then I'll get back with you and we'll answer it there. But the idea behind it was this. At Keller Williams, as we truly like pioneered the idea of expansion, an agent being able to build a business, build a team, and then ultimately build it and sell in multiple cities. My expansion network today sells, United Home Group sells in 115 brokerages, 115 cities across the U.S. That's 28 states, and we've launched into our 5th country. And there's pros and cons to that. Like there's challenges around it as to how we've been able to do business. The idea of being able to have one statewide brokerage in each state that's dedicated to the expansion process, because it is a little different and it does operate a little bit different, all the way down to how the real estate commission sees it or how the state laws see it. And they're different in every state. And so what we're doing right now is we're rolling out. We have one state that opens the 1st of September. We have another that will open the 15th of September. And then the plan is to have all 50 with a brokerage, a broker, and it'll be called Keller Williams Expansion Network, Keller Williams. It'll be in all 50 states. And what happens is this. Our expansion team owners, so I'll use my example. In Oregon, in Portland, where my home base business is, we call it a hub business, right? My hub team, Portland Real Estate Group, is already licensed and at a local market center, a local brokerage in Portland, Oregon. And then we have these spoke agents. We have expansion agents all across the U.S. And of course, I said in 5 different countries. The expansion network is just in the U.S. There might be an opportunity or a play at some point to include, but for right now, it's just in the 50 states in the U.S. Let's go get that and do it amazing. Our stated mission right now before the end of the year is to have a broker hired, administrative hired in all 50 states, have all 50 states approved. We already have everything turned in, have all 50 states approved, and a true white glove service for our 2,900 potential expansion agents who are currently in our network. We have 2,900 agents in Keller Williams that are earmarked as expansion agents. And so that's who this is for. The team hubs can go into the expansion network. So here's how that would work. Let me go back to my example in Portland. My team, Portland Real Estate Group, they could go into the expansion network in Oregon because we're an expansion business. But what we pay our market center, our brokerage in Portland, doesn't change. This way. Like all of us have like a paper license somewhere, like a real estate license. I've never been carded. No one's ever asked me for it, but it sits in a binder in Portland at the appropriate place per state law. The digital brokerage in Oregon, mine would move there, but I don't lose my market center and my market center doesn't lose me. I don't stop going into the market center. If I rent a cubicle or I go to the team meetings, I don't stop renting a cubicle. I don't stop going to the team meetings. They don't take me off the follow-up list or the guest list for the holiday party. Like I'm still part of the organization. Like at Keller Williams, we understand the market center is the lifeblood of which Keller Williams works through. So this doesn't go away. We move the license to a digital brokerage for expansion agents. What does go away is the market center, of which I own 3 as the operating partner. The market center loses liability. The market center is no longer processing the transactions legally for the expansion business. The market center loses liability. The market center loses oversight. They're not having to oversee it. The market center loses the challenge of writing the checks. And I know writing checks is easy, but I'll also be honest, like our expansion checks sometimes are really complicated. Sometimes we close an expansion deal and there's 4 or 5 checks written from it or 7 different, sometimes it's a pain. Sometimes it's easy, but the market center loses those things. So my hub team could move into the expansion network in Oregon, but the dollars that we pay our market center today stay the same tomorrow. Nothing changes there. There's no reduction in cap. There's no savings. It's the same deal. I could move the license if there was a reason to. And some teams would go, oh, that's great. That'll keep our marketing congruent. That's simple. That's easy. Like one of my challenges being in 115 cities is that my marketing is a bear, because I legally have to put on every single website, on every single piece, and my partner does, where it's like, I'm Bob Smith of United Home Group at Keller Williams First Elite Partners of Chattanooga, which I made that up, but that's how the business names sound. It's a lot of words. And we have to have that. That's 115, like we have these lists and lists of logos to be appropriate. And so to streamline that process, Keller Williams opening the expansion network is able to say, all you have to have is Keller Williams, because that's the name in all 50 states. Like how simple, how easy. Easier for the consumer, easier for the brokerage, easier for the partner, the expansion business, easier for the state, like easier all the way around. It just takes some money, a bucket of money, to open 50 digital brokerages and hire 50 brokers and 50 administrators. So back to the example of my hub team. If there's a compelling reason for me to move my hub team to the statewide brokerage, I totally can. And all that moves is my license. I'm not going to move my office out of it. We office out of the market center. I'm not going to change that. My license moves. All of my fees to my market center remain the same. However, my expansion partners across the country in those 115 cities, if it makes sense for them to move into the expansion network at the statewide brokerage, they'd go to their market center and they'll move their license in as soon as the state is open. When that happens, we have a whole economic structure. And here's what the economic structure looks like. It's very simple, but you almost have to hear it a few times before it clicks and you're like, oh, that's how it works. At least for me. I've got to hear things multiple times. I always feel like the remedial student. But here's the economic structure of it. It's an 80-20 split. And that split caps at $5,000 a year in company dollar. There's also a 6% split for franchise fees, and that caps at $3,000, which every Keller Williams associate already pays in North America. That's common. That's what we all do. It's easy peasy, and it caps at $3,000. You pay it off, and you're done till the next year. And so when you put those two together, that's $8,000. But the cap of $5,000, which is an 80-20 split, $5,000 cap. For most agents, that's going to be 3 or 4 transactions closed. There's a couple areas that the sales price is so low, it might be 8 or 10 transactions. There's some areas that are so high, it's going to be 1 transaction or 2 transactions, and they'll be capped out for the next 11 months, 3 weeks, right? And then they'll start over again. And that $5,000 cap, when it's paid, here's what happens to the money. The $5,000 comes into the statewide brokerage. We'll call it Oregon Keller Williams. It'll just be called Keller Williams, but let's say Oregon Keller Williams, and I have an expansion agent. Or a friend of mine from a different state, their hub is in Milwaukee, but they have an expansion agent in Oregon. That expansion agent has a home market center. Maybe it's mine, maybe it's one of the ones owned by one of my friends here. It's okay, it doesn't matter, it's great. That $5,000 comes into the state brokerage. Of that $5,000, 90% or $4,500 gets sent to the local brokerage, the local market center. So let's say the expansion agent is an expansion agent in my market center for a hub team somewhere else. $5,000 will go into the Oregon brokerage business. $4,500 gets paid out to my market center. So the market center earns $4,500, 90% of the available dollars. Of course, if the associate only paid 3, because we are a cap system, if they only paid 3, then 90% goes to the market center and 10% goes to the state brokerage. So when you hear those numbers, you realize that for Gary Keller, who's underwriting this project, it's not a moneymaker. Like if you're a business owner, or even if you have a brain, you're like, it's really difficult to open 50 state brokerages, hire 50 brokers, have administrators, have the business costs. Some of those states, like we legally have to go rent space in. Some of those states we don't. But there's expenses, there's costs. And for Gary to do it with 10% being kept, like it's a money loser. We're anticipating losing a few $1 million the first 12 or 18 months in this, but Gary understands how important it is to take this step. We believe that expansion is the natural evolution of a massive agent business. We believe that today we're living in the era of the agent. We believe that we've lived in the era of the brokerage. We've lived in the era of the franchise. We've lived in those times. We've lived in the era of the team. And today we're living in the era of giant teams that end up going into expansion. And we don't believe in having borders. We don't believe in building up walls and saying, well, you can do this and you can't do that. We just believe in saying where you want to take your business and what makes sense to your business, here's a clear path. Our job is just to pave the way. Our job is to knock over trees and knock over walls and say, where do you want to go? What do you want this to look like? And we are behind you. We're the organization that's built our entire company off the idea of where do you want your business to go? We want it to go as big as it possibly can, and our job is to help you and hold your hand along the way. So back to the economics of the statewide brokerage. $5,000 cap, 80-20 split. 90% gets shipped back to the local host market center. The market center doesn't lose the agent. The agent's license does go to the statewide brokerage, but the market center still sees the person. They still go in and use the copy machine. They'll punch in their code and get billed like they normally would. They can still come in and rent a cubicle from the market center. They can still go to all the training. They don't become a second-class agent. We simply move the liability of their license somewhere. They can still go in and talk to the team leader. They can still go in and have a relationship with the OP or the productivity coach or the MCA or any of the staff. Like, none of those things change, which is also why we send 90% of the money back to the market center. The other economics, $65 per month per person. So $65 a month per human being, and that covers E&O insurance and technology. And that covers E&O whether you close 0 deals, 1 deal, or a bazillion deals. $65 a month. There's a $30 per transaction fee. So if you close 1 deal in a month, it's $30. It's a transaction fee, and that helps us to pay for the administration around it. Certainly doesn't cover it, but it helps us to defray the cost. If you close 1, it's $30. If you close 10 times 30 is 300, is $300. There's no cap on that. So if you were to close 100 deals in a month, which would be awesome, if you were to close 100 deals in a month, it'd be 100 times $30. And that's for the spoke agent, $30 per transaction. Those are the economics. 5K split, 80-20, 5K cap, 80-20 split. Franchise fee remains $3,000, $65 a person, E&O and technology, $30 per transaction for a transaction fee. We're trying to keep it very, very simple, trying to keep it very, very straight, very basic. It's only for expansion agents. And so it's for expansion agents who work on an expansion business as a spoke agent, if you will. And it's for expansion networks, or expansion network owners or expansion hub teams. But remember, the expansion hub team doesn't change economics. Because, like, for instance, my team in Portland, we've been building from Portland, we've been supported from Portland, we've been housed in Portland. Like, that market center has helped grow us, and we've helped grow it. And so if my team in Portland were to move to the statewide brokerage, which makes sense, our economics don't change. We don't go to the $5,000 cap. That's just for the spoke agents. And so it doesn't change those local hub teams. All right, let me get a couple of the questions. Will this also have an effect on market center market share numbers and such through things like MLS and broker metrics? Yes. Because what happens is, let's say, I'll just use mine again, Keller Williams Portland Central shows up on broker metrics in the MLS, and we get a bar chart. And that bar chart shows Keller Williams Portland Central. It's its own standalone entity. There's other Keller Williams offices in Portland, and so they show up on the same bar chart. They're here or here. They do more or less or whatever's appropriate. This will be another bar, and it'll probably be very, very small, because we only have 2,900 expansion partners in the country right now, and that's an average of 3 or 4 per market center. It's not a whole bunch. And so it's going to be very minuscule compared to the business the market center is doing. And so then you choose, when you go to be a marketeer, right? You've got to choose what you're going to market. And I don't believe there's anything wrong as long as you're appropriate and as long as you're honest. And so what we'll do in Portland is we'll quite often take all the KW offices in Portland, we'll add them together, and we will redo the bar chart that the MLS sends us, or that Broker Metrics sends us. And it'll show Keller Williams combined offices. It'll say like 5 combined KW offices. And so then we're being honest in our marketing, like we're saying it's not just one brokerage, this is all 5 KW. To the consumer, they just see KW. The consumer doesn't, see or differentiate this one, and this one. Just like even though there might be 10 McDonald's in your city, maybe they're owned by 3 different McDonald's franchise owners. Maybe it's 10 different, or maybe we don't know. But people just see McDonald's, right? And so as long as you're appropriate in marketing, I think you tell your own story. But you do need to be honest about it, right? But we already do that. So in my world, that wouldn't change. But yes, it will. It will change the MLS. It's a whole different brokerage license number. This will help agents licensed in multiple states, and will this save them paying multiple caps? Yes, yes, yes. And so that's one of the split, not split, but that's one of the variations or strains, if you will, of doing this for expansion agents. Is we've come to understand how many of our agents across the country, like they live on state lines, where, like, again, Portland's an easy example. Maybe you're an agent in Portland and there's a river, the Columbia River, between Portland and Vancouver, Washington. It's 2 different states. You got Oregon and Washington, and you can sell on both sides of the river, and maybe you go back and forth all the time. This would allow them, if they're an expansion, to be able to go into that. And so this would allow them to be able to have one cap. So as an expansion spoke agent, let's say you're up in the Northeast, like for my friends up in the Northeast, those itty bitty little states, like I've lived my whole life in the West, all of our states are huge, but those itty bitty little states geographically with a whole bunch of people on, in them up in the Northwest, I have some friends who have licenses in 3 and 4 states. And in the course of one day's driving, they can be in all 3 or 4 of those states. And if you're an expansion agent with the Keller Williams Expansion Network, KWEN, it's one cap. Whether you sell in 1 state or 4 states, it's just one cap. We're okay. Like, we're fine with it. So that answers that. How does this affect the market center from the gross net standpoint? So gross net, as far as like bringing agents in and removing agents, so like agent count number, we don't have an answer of what trigger or what lever, but we do know that we want to maintain the integrity of the agent count at the market center, like the associate count, the human count. And so we do know the target is to say, let's say that my market center in Portland has 5 expansion agents, which would be more than average. Let's say we have 5 expansion agents and all 5 go into the expansion network. We don't want my agent count, the internal number with KW, to go down by 5. We just don't know what lever to keep those 5 on our roster, right? Like not our brokerage roster, that's illegal, but like on our internal company roster. We don't know what lever, like what piece and win more to make that happen yet, but trust me, there's a team of incredibly intelligent people working around the clock on pulling together the details of it. We do know the target. And so let's say that, like for instance, there's a city right now that because of the expansion model, we're working on bringing a giant expansion team to Keller Williams. And there's one area that this would bring like 12 people to, which is awesome. Like that's the idea. We're going to grow with it too. If all we do is recycle our current agents, like that would be a win for them and a win for KW. Gary would still do it. Like he has said, listen, if all this does is help our 2,900 expansion agents, he said, this has got to be done. We need to do it. But why stop there? Like we're intending to help expansion grow. We're intending to make expansion the simplest, easiest thing on the earth to do if that's what the agent wants to do. So our intention is it goes from 3,000 to 10,000 or 3,000 to 5,000. Like let's grow, let's have more. Anyway, so those 10 that would come into that market center, that would be 10 new associates in the market center. And so we just don't know what trigger in our internal system to do it, but yes. Is the tech fee billed through the market center or state brokerage? Great question. All the fees are billed directly through the state brokerage. And so the $65 per person, state brokerage, market center stays out of it. The only thing the market center would bill somebody in the statewide brokerage for is if there's some service the market center sells to that agent. So let's say that agent is already renting a cubicle for $70 a month. Well, the market center would bill the $70 a month to that agent after they go to the statewide brokerage. But that's between the market center and the agent. That's like space rent. Let's say that the market center has color copy codes, right? Or you have free black and white or whatever it is that you do, it's different everywhere. The agent can move their license to the statewide brokerage and all their fees are there. But let's say they still come in and make copies. The market center can still bill them their $4 for copies or $12 for copies. Totally cool, easy peasy. The $65 gets billed by the statewide brokerage. The $30 for the transaction fee, billed by the statewide brokerage. Withholding the 80/20, the split, and writing the checks, statewide brokerage. This is about making it easier on market centers, not harder. So great question, thank you. What about commercial expansion? We're treating it the same as we are expansion right now. And we have our new commercial director at Keller Williams International. Like, we're looking at, okay, what should this look like directly to help commercial expansion? We just don't know anybody right now. And maybe they exist. If they do, have someone, send me a message. We don't know anybody right now who has at least what feels like a typical expansion business on the commercial side. We've got some great commercial agents who do business in multiple cities, and they'll use like a friend or a referral partner or whatever in those cities, or they'll just like do consulting for a giant firm, and then the firm uses a local licensee or a local agent. That's not uncommon on the commercial side. I just don't know anybody yet, and maybe they exist, who runs a commercial expansion business that says, hey, I've got a commercial expansion agent over here 4 cities away, and every deal they do is part of my business. I don't know anybody who's doing that, but we want to see it. Like, we want that to happen. All right. The company dollar goes to the hub market center, or the market center the agent rostered in. Great question. It's the market center the agent is rostered in. So here's the example. There's only one, for my business, United Home Group, there's only one hub market center. And that hub doesn't mean anything to my partner. And like, I had dinner last night with my friend Wandy, and Wandy's on the East Coast. Hub market center to her doesn't mean anything. She never goes to the Portland market center. She lives in Florida. And so the hub market center, their dollars stay the same for my hub team, Portland Real Estate Group. But Wandy's market center in the East Coast, when she goes into the statewide system, her $5,000 cap, the $4,500, goes to her local market center. Doesn't go to my hub in Portland. Makes sense? It goes to her local market center where she's rostered in. Really good question. So when I was with KW, my cap was $21K. With KWEN model, that would make my cap $5K. If you're expansion, yes. Yes. If you're an agent on an expansion team or a spoke agent on an expansion team, yes. Yep. It'd be $5,000. Yes. Our office is still able to charge the spoke agent hub team transaction fees or BAC. I can't imagine why they would want to. Can't imagine what there would be a reason for. Our office is still able to charge the spoke agent. So we'll use Wandy, my friend Wandy. She's on the East Coast. You're saying, would that market center be able to charge her a transaction fee? There'd be no reason to, because that market center is not doing any transactions with her. That market center is not processing any. But that market center might offer a service that Wandy wants. That market center might offer a coaching program, or might offer a class, or might offer a training, or might offer a cubicle or space rent, and she could pay for that for them. But I can't see a reason why there'd be a path for that. But shoot me an email on that. If I didn't answer it, shoot me an email, Cody Gibson at KW. Maybe there's a good solid reason that I don't know, and we'd go, oh my gosh, that makes total sense. But the market center can still do deals with those spoke agents and be like, hey, we offer these services. Do you want them? Rough dates and timelines to start transitioning into it. September 1, we have our first state going live. September 15, we'll bring agents into it, and then we have 2 other states that are slated for the 15th through the 30th of September. We think we'll open 10 or 12 states in October, and we think that we'll have 50 by the end of the year. We think many of them will roll just about that Thanksgiving time to Christmas time, which will work out really good. Like, that's a good, easy time to move licenses into it and take care of it. In most of these states, every piece of documentation is already submitted. In most of these states, everything is in. And in many of them, we already have a statewide broker that we've already struck a deal with, and they're going to become the broker of it. Some of the states, everything is ready. They're just waiting for a broker identified on it. Some of the states are like, hey, it's like working with the DMV or the IRS. They're like, hey, thanks for sending everything in. We'll let you know when we get to it. Super backed up, so it'll be a month or 2. Like, some of those states are like that. But we should be able to have all 50 by the end of the year. We think that's really, really strong. If the hub is branded with a name and they expand into the same state, can they keep their brand name? So I'll use Portland Real Estate Group as an example. So Portland Real Estate Group in Portland, if I were to move Portland Real Estate Group into the statewide brokerage, I'd be Portland Real Estate Group of Keller Williams, and I could have Portland Real Estate Group in Medford, which is a city south of Portland by about 4 hours. I just don't know why I'd want to. Like, I would want it to be a different name, right? However, your team might not, like mine is geographically named Portland Real Estate Group, which has its own limits. United Home Group is my expansion business. So if I had United Home Group in Portland, then I could use United Home Group in Medford 4 hours away in the expansion network. Yes. Yep. There are some states that have really tricky, sticky laws around a team name. And my opinion is that over the course of the next 2 or 3 or 5 years, states will understand that agents today no longer just sell in one small city. But for right now, there are a couple of states that are really sticky, and they'll say, if you use that name in this part of the state, you can't use it. I mean, there's a few, like, that has nothing to do with us. If there's a state law that overrules something that we're doing, we have to abide by it, of course. But having one statewide brokerage makes everything as simple as it possibly could. What stops every agent from moving their license to the statewide brokerage versus the market center? Easy, because we don't have a single market center in the country who's only expansion. We have 816 offices, and we've got 2,900 expansion agents, including hubs. We have 2,100 spoke agents. So 2,100 divided by 816, I'm not amazing at math, but that's about 3 per office. And so this would be applicable to 3 people in a market center. The average market center is well over 200 agents. So it's applicable to 3 people out of 200. So that's why, like, you can't have 100 people in your market center say, hey, I'd love a $5,000 cap, throw me in. We go, cool, you got to be a part of an expansion business. And we have guardrails up on the expansion business. We have a guardrail up of what they need to be able to split so that nobody could gamify the system. Not that somebody would, but somebody would try. And so that's why. Yep, it's just for expansion. Who's the agent that best fits into this program? Expansion agents. It's an expansion hub business that has agents in one other market center or 20 other market centers or 100 other market centers. That's who best fits in it, because that's the only person that it's built for. It's for expansion agents. Does the rainmaker of a team in Illinois with expansion agent in Colorado or Florida move into statewide, or only those 2 expansion agents? Great question. And so your spoke agent in Colorado, it would make sense to move into the statewide brokerage. Your spoke agent in Florida makes sense to move into Florida. The hub team, rainmaker, synonymous words, in Illinois, you have to decide, does it make sense in Illinois? Like, is there a compelling reason to move your hub team into it? For me, the most compelling reason is like unified across the board branding, like just simple, easy, everything remains the same. To me, that makes a lot of sense. But if you're paying $30,000 a year in Illinois, I don't know if you are or not, but if you're paying 30 at your rainmaker team, you're still going to pay 30 the next day. Like, you don't float down to the $5,000. That's only spoke agents. The hub team remains the same. And there's some agents where they're like, hey, like I've got a partner in Kansas City, and she called and she goes, Cody, this is awesome. She said, but my cap at my market center is $3,500. What do I do? And I said, well, then you'll probably stay with your license there. Like, why would you pay $1,500 more? That's okay. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. None of this is about making anybody do anything. This is about offering another option. And I want you to think, like, KW has gotten so big and we're doing so many things that we're working really hard to offer optionality. What works for you? What type of business do you have? What type of business are you building? And what doorway fits best? What pathway fits best? There's going to be somebody who looks at this and just goes, for whatever reason, this doesn't work for my type of expansion. Okay, no problem. You don't have to go into it. Like, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. You could leave your license right where it is. And remember, the market center doesn't lose the agent, and the agent doesn't lose the market center. We're moving the license, we're moving the liability, we're moving the oversight, we're moving the transaction, we're moving processing. We're not moving the human being. The human being can still walk into a market center. Like, nobody cards me when I walk in. Now, legally, they got to go to their statewide brokerage or broker for broker questions. But you and I know that. We've been agents forever. We know how to do it. What is a spoke agent and what is a hub expansion team? The hub expansion team, Portland Real Estate Group, my team here in Portland, that's the hub. Spoke agents are all the agents who have joined me. There's 200 of them across the country right now in 115 cities. They would all be spoke agents in my business. So imagine a wheel. You have a hub and then the spokes. If I have multiple HMC agreements in one state, I'm assuming you mean home or host. Yeah, host market centers. Okay. If I have multiple host market center agreements in one state, they all go away, or do I just have one HMC agreement? So that's a great question. So I'll take Florida. I have a decent sized expansion business in Florida. United Home Group is in multiple market centers there. We would have multiple host market center agreements. So like my friend Wandy would be in her market center. It wouldn't make sense for her to identify a host market center 6 hours away that she's never going to go into, that she doesn't know anybody in, that she doesn't work out of at all. That wouldn't make any sense. Like in Florida, it would be her host market center. There's probably some state that's itty bitty maybe that you would have 3 partners and they're all in the same town or all in the same city. Maybe there's a reason to have one host market center, but we're going to assume that 99% of the time it's going to be whatever host market center that agent's already in. And then if somebody joins the business, like a new agent, they would select the host market center that makes sense. Why would you select one 5 hours away? You'd select the one that you drive by. You'd select the one that's most convenient for you. You would select the one, just like we already have people select the market center they want to be affiliated with. All right, last question. Will fees be the same for expansion and leasing? Not sure what that means unless you mean like commercial. Most of the time we have like, maybe you're talking about like New York, where we have agents who do giant lease agreements and they would have a lease commission that comes in. That would be the same. Would be the same cap, the same $5,000. Yep. That would just be like in Oregon. Our agents don't do any rentals or leasing. Like we just don't. Like you have to be a whole different license here. But there are states like New York, you could do a lease and make 25 grand, or Miami and make 25 grand. Downtown LA, yeah. And so those leases, we treat it like commission, same 5K cap, 80-20 split. All right, so I will be able to answer one more. So we receive 90% of the 20% until they cap at 5 grand. Yes, yep, yeah. And so when we receive company dollar in, 90% goes back to the market center. When we've gotten to 5 grand, that's 4,500 goes back to the host market center. Anything you need, I'm going to keep doing these. It's the same usually bag of questions, but you guys had a couple of questions today that I haven't seen yet, so thank you. That really helps me. My email is codygibson@kw.com. You can always shoot me a message there. I'm Cody Gibson 1 on Instagram if that's easier. Whatever's simple for you is fine. Remember, I'll summarize it all right here. This is about making the path easy. It's not about forcing anything, and it's about making an easy button to say if you'd like to expand and you'd like to do it at Keller Williams, we want to be the easiest, simplest, most beneficial place for that to happen. And we want to reward our market centers for being able to make it happen. So 90% of the company dollar goes back to the host market center, but no one's forced to do anything. Maybe there's a compelling reason. Somebody called me and said, I pay $6,000 and I want to stay and I'm okay paying $6,000. No problem. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if there's a compelling reason for that, go do it. Like I'd like to know what it is so I can help understand it, but go do it. No one's being forced to do anything. If you need anything, codygibson@kw.com. We're so excited about this. This is a massive step for us to go and do this. It's a giant undertaking of Gary to write the check to say, listen, let's go open these 50 statewide brokerages. Let's make it better for our agent, better for the expansion model, better for the market center. Win, win, win. It's what we are about. Have an amazing day. Thank you for being here.